Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Now, before I get into this video, my apologies to all of you if I copiously use the following phrases: stupid, idiotic, and dumbass. Given that the subject matter is Biden, that kinda is to be expected. I did want to do this video yesterday, but I'm kinda glad I pushed it back to today because the White House has managed to somehow make this glorious clusterfuck of a situation even more foolish. Joe Biden's divide and clunker approach is rather poetical. The speech President Biden gave on Thursday was one he reportedly wanted to give for weeks, but White House staff resisted. Aides didn't think it was the right speech or the right time, which in plain English means they didn't like it. For once, give them credit. Now that we see what garbage the big guy had on his mind, they were right to resist. Unfortunately, he pulled rank, and they had to let Biden be Biden. The result was bad for Democrats and terrible for the nation. Yeah, that's kind of what you get when you pick a senile retard for a standard bearer. To call it a hateful speech doesn't do justice to its awfulness. The promise of an address on the soul of our nation and the setting of Philadelphia's Independence Hall suggested it would be an appeal to our better angels. Instead, with lurid red lighting and two Marines standing at attention to serve as props, Biden delivered a 24-minute screed that was disjointed, rancidly partisan, and at heart, a declaration of war against those Americans who do not support him. Oh, and by the way, world of difference here, right? Trump attacks the bullshit press, the least trusted media in the world, might I remind you, and then the Democrats, who are insane, call him a fascist. Who holds the press accountable exactly? Seemingly no one. They can lie through their arsehole, but when someone calls them on their BS spewing from said arsehole, their instantaneous gut reaction is to call him a fascist. I wonder how on earth the media became so distrusted. Oh well, it's a mystery for the ages. But if you're a Democrat, you can say you're going to unite the country, and attack those who support your opposition, and their dipshits don't bat an eye. Alright then, it's worth noting that even those who ostensibly support him aren't embracing his solution. Few, if any, Democrats running in swing districts or states have endorsed the president's war on Republicans. In tone and substance, the speech was the polar opposite of Biden's inaugural address just 20 months ago. Then he pledged to bring the country together, using unity or similar words 15 times, as in the sequence, "My whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people and uniting our nation." If only he had a soul. This time, there was talk only of defeating the other side because their politics, on everything from abortion to taxes to immigration, makes them un-American. He otherized MAGA and MAGA Republicans 13 times as a dangerous subverting force. How did Biden fall so far so fast, and what led him to insist on such a dreadful spectacle? The short answer is desperation. Biden's presidency is a non-stop disaster, with even its legislative successes becoming drivers of the highest inflation in 40 years. That's like boasting about your newest hole you just shot on your own foot being with a smaller bullet than all the other ones. His failures from Afghanistan to rising crime to the open southern border have weakened America's global standing and created domestic debacles. Unwilling to change course, Biden decided to cast the blame on unhappy voters and demonize them. And so the tens of millions of Americans Barack Obama derided as bitter clingers and Hillary Clinton called deplorables are now labeled extremists and enemies of democracy. It's rather curious that 3 Democrats in a row now openly hate those who don't approve of them, but this is the party that brands itself as inclusive. Biden didn't use the word traitors, but that was the thrust of his attack. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger, they thrive on chaos, they do not live in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies, or some shit like that, he said at one point. Later came this one: MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. So does anyone when they look at the camera footage of liberal cities, by the way. They spread fear and lies, lies told for profit and power. And then this one: the MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail. Days earlier, Biden said supporting Trump is akin to supporting semi-fascism, whatever the fuck that means. Quite a week for president unity. The speech was so raw that even some friendly media got off the bus. Reporters and commentators at CBS, CNN, and others called it nakedly partisan and cited the use of the Marines and the Marine Band as inappropriate. The president, stung by the unexpected criticism, actually tried on the morning after to deny the essence of what he had said. On Friday, a reporter asked him if he considers all Trump supporters to be a threat to this country. It was a fair question. Said Biden, "Come on, look guys, you keep trying to make that case. I don't consider any Trump supporters to be a threat to the country." So, never mind? Not quite. The fact is, Biden is facing a heap of trouble in the midterms, and the speech reflects both his panic and his strategy. The panic is based on the likelihood that because of the president's radical policy failures, Republicans will take control of one and perhaps both chambers of Congress in the midterms. Any president would have his agenda stymied at that point, but Biden also has another reason to fear such an outcome: the GOP reckoning. The leading GOP members in both houses have pledged to investigate him over the compelling evidence he participated in and benefited from son Hunter Biden's foreign businesses. Up to now, the president has been protected by his party's majority and Attorney General Merrick Garland, who seems to have thrown a wet blanket on the long-running FBI probe of Hunter's finances. So, the president has been protected by his party's majority. Oh, that's rather handy, isn't it? So if your party holds both houses of Congress, you're essentially immune from prosecution even if you commit high treason. Well, you know when the people say the US government is dysfunctional? Geez, I can't imagine why. But voluminous information on Hunter's laptop, visitors' logs from Biden's days as vice president, and statements by a former partner of Hunter's, Tony Bobulinski, convinced me that Joe Biden was sharing the millions of dollars received by Hunter and his brother Jim Biden. In short, the president has much to hide and real reason to fear a Republican Congress. As for the content of his speech, nothing stirs the fire of Dems more than the name Trump. And because developments from Garland's raid on Mar-a-Lago have put Trump in the news daily, Biden probably saw this as the perfect time to make his MAGA equals un-American argument. He gave the base what it wanted and added the license to hate most Republicans as a bonus. He probably assumed that, with his polls ticking up slightly amid talk of Dems potentially holding Congress, now was the time to go for the jugular. Thus, from a political perspective, his calculation about the speech makes some sense. The problem is that the content was so dark and uninspiring that it lacked the gravitas of a memorable presidential address and came off as just another campaign broadside. The result of Biden's unforced error is that he probably turned off as many voters as he stimulated and might have blunted his recent poll momentum. All of which explains why his aides usually hide the president from the public and press and why Barack Obama made this memorable observation: "Don't underestimate Joe's ability to fuck things up." Now, the reason I wanted to bring all of this up is when I look at this shit show of a zoo that is the US administration, I'll be honest with you guys, half the time I have no idea what the hell I'm even seeing, and the other half I'm wishing I didn't see any of this at all. But, I often veer wildly back and forth between malice and stupidity because some of the things this ancient buffoon does has me frowning my brows thinking there must be some reason for this because these people cannot be this stupid. Now, as I said at the start, I did push this back to today because he posted this on fucking Twitter. Now, I really don't know what to make of this. Firstly, Joe Biden is obviously not the guy in charge of the Twitter accounts. I mean, for heaven's sake, this man literally cannot talk to any member of the press unless it is pre-planned. Every time he goes off script, the White House has needed to do damage control. I'd like to repeat that because it sounds vaguely important. The so-called leader of the free world, cannot speak to people of his own free will unless under hawkish-eyed supervision, and no one thinks that's kind of weird. Can you imagine then giving that blundering fucking idiot a toy that would allow him to say anything at will at any given moment without that hawkish-eyed oversight? If you thought Trump's Twitter account was controversial, can you imagine an unfiltered Biden one?
That would be fucking mayhem!
Thank you, great. Part of me thinks he'd secretly try and find his actual polling numbers, but given that he is old as dirt, by the time he figures that out, he probably will be in the middle of the 2024 general. Now, admittedly, I have a theory about this administration, but reading this article, and I'm going to take Mr. Goodwin at face value, has thrown a monkey wrench into my whole theory, so I don't know if it is good or bad if my theory is wrong, but bollocks to it, I'll put it out there anyway. Because the man looks like a bumbling moron, he wanders off aimlessly, his wife is literally pulling him around. Without a teleprompter, he might have a stroke, he takes questions only from the pre-planned reporters, he will just fuck off after reading from his little book and take no questions at all, or the aides will swarm him the moment someone asks him something for which he is not prepared for. Things like that give the impression he is not the bloke steering the ship, people. So, for a while now, I have felt, if you could imagine a big stage with a spotlight, he's the marionette on the puppet strings. Obviously, we can't see who's the one pulling the strings, and the electorate is the audience, and the public reaction is used to gauge how far and how hard you can push the agenda. So the whole country is a damn testing ground. That's how it felt. Not like someone who's really running the joint, more like an experiment in third-person governance. And then I read this, and now I only have more questions, specifically around that part where he said he wanted to give the speech. Now, I am going to presume he read it and thought it was a good idea. I could be wrong, but I always felt his aides were part of the cabal running the gig. So for them to say, no, it is not a good idea, leads me to think he might have more autonomy than we are speculating, which, as much as it is terrifying, is also pretty fucking funny. But from this perspective, it looks like the White House behind closed doors is going through its own civil war, and the warring factions are using Biden as this temporarily possessed conduit. It's really bizarre, because given the backtracking mere hours after the speech, no doubt due to the public backlash on Twitter because that is where these fucking people live, I can imagine the aides and the speechwriter coming to blows behind closed doors over what a terrible fucking idea this whole event was, and Biden is somewhere sitting there wishing for clean underwear and more ice cream, with that stupid deer-in-the-headlights look on his face because he has dementia. Now, the amount of potential scenarios here is ridiculous. Let's assume, for argument's sake, he read the speech before he delivered it, and the aides told him, no, that's not a good idea, but he wanted to do it anyway. Which tells me he has no political finesse at all. He has no idea of the political climate of the country he is supposed to be leading. Apparently, yeah. Did the aides then tell him to walk it back afterwards because it was such a disaster? And then whoever holds the Twitter account said, no, fuck off, we're siding with the speechwriter, bollocks to what the aides or what the president even himself said in the backtracking, we're going to go with the evil doomsday speech that spawned 1,000 memes. Or that he didn't know what was in the speech prior to going live with it, suffered memory lapse in the hours after doing the event, and the walking back was genuinely him because he had no idea what he just said mere hours ago, and then the speechwriter grabbed the Twitter account holder and told him to repeat the worst part of the speech that went viral. Do you see how utterly disorganized and borderline comically incompetent all of this fucking looks? There's evil in this, sure, but the evil comes across more like stupidity rather than malice. It's not some clever evil geniuses we have here, it's more like the Three Stooges went rogue. But speaking of the dementia, let me make my position on this perfectly clear. For all of those people who say, oh, this is elder abuse and it's in poor taste, you can fuck off. Trump being the oldest president did not prohibit him from getting slandered on a daily damn basis, even as he was doing a pretty good job. Now this old lech, who is arguably the most corrupt creature ever to attain higher office, who has a long history of selling out his position of power to the highest bidder to enrich himself and his family. Now we must look beyond his past transgressions and treat him kindly simply because he is old.
Get the fuck out my face with that bullshit.
Exactly, thank you, Eddie. So no, I do not ascribe to this pathetic culture of politeness because it makes no damn sense at all. Every Biden should suffer unrelenting waves of merciless ridicule as long as they're frickin' breathing. Because we have to remember something here as well, people. If you were to construct the most cliched caricature of a politician, embodied with all of these stereotypical traits you can conjure up, Biden would be the epitome of that caricature. He is very corrupt, he has used government to enrich himself and his family, has a long track record spanning decades of being a pathological liar, and most importantly, like most politicians, he's a fucking idiot. Like I said before, he's Mr. Magoo, except with a sex pest past and a fetish for those who still wear candied bracelets. But even during his prime, Biden was always unimpressive. He was a bloviating schmuck of an arsehole, a weak-minded, feeble old fool that's easily exploited. But I will end all of this on a happy note. Always remember, the way this machinery operates and the idiots in that administration Do not think for a single second there is real unity among that bunch. They hate each other, and I will bet my life on that. You think Biden and Harris get along? They hate each other's guts. They can preach all about the unity and diversity and all of that BS. Pfft, that is window dressing, people. That's all for the cameras. Behind closed doors, those people are cutthroat, power-hungry sociopaths who will bleed each other dry to advance. They are no allies, only fair weather friends. It's what happens when you get a bunch of idiots who can't stand each other together, trying to pull off something that will never ever work in a million years, and we get to bear witness to their catastrophically stupid implosion. Woo. And that is all for today, and I will see you all next time.